All right, Rob Pollak, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. So tell me a little bit about your business. Like where do you work? Is it in person or over Zoom? What do you do?
So I have hybrid. I do probably about 75% over Zoom right now and about 25% in person based in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm personally in Union County, but most of the students I work with are in Bergen County. So I have an office there and run some mock tests there. But since pandemic, most of my students I meet with online.
Oh, interesting. And it still is kind of stayed online. It's not as much
Yeah,
as
so I used to drive, like 45,000 miles a year to everyone's house. And when I realized that there was a way to do this without driving 45,000 miles a year, so I could coach
yeah.
a little league and see my kids once in a while, it turned into a really nice way to kind of keep the same protocol going with tutoring, but having a much better lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I stuck with it as much as I can.
Yep, I know the feeling. So now are you mostly SAT and ACT or do you do other tests or subjects too?
I do 99% SAT and ACT, and then occasionally I'll help a student that I've worked with for the GRE, the GMAT, classwork, just one-offs here and there. But my specialty is really SAT and ACT.
Great. Okay. So now what's like a typical course that the tutoring, I mean, if it went according to plan, which it probably doesn't most of the time, but like, what, how many times would you meet with them? How long are the sessions? Like, how does it typically go with students?
My sessions are an hour and a half, and for me that's really important because I want to have at least half the time to review any homework that they did, and at least half the time to work on teaching fresh content and focusing on areas where there's potential for growth. And my normal recommendation is 12 meetings before the first sitting of a test.
Right.
Obviously, there are some kids who need to meet much less than that, and some that need to meet much more than that. But my standard recommendation is let's try and schedule 12 sessions.
Yep. And then what sort of homework, I guess for math in particular, like before you were using Mathchops, what was the homework routine like? Would it be like a practice test or drills, or what did you like to do?
Both. So a lot of practice tests, and then I've compiled a bunch of worksheets from old tests, from CUDA, just topics that I know we spend a lot of time working on. And sometimes I give those for homework, but I find that I more often will give practice tests for homework and then work on those types of drills when we're in a session so that we can talk about how to do them and the different themes that are coming up in all those questions.
Right. And is the theory behind all that work sort of like, well, there are these questions that show up a lot, and I don't know which ones they are, but some of them are going to show up. And so let me just get you better at as many of those common questions as possible. Is
So
that
they're more topic based. So it's like, oh, you're struggling with permutations and combinations. So let me show you basically every single way that gets tested on the ACT. And we'll start with the easy ones and work up to the hard ones. And usually that will veer off into other similar topics like probability questions or expected value questions. And we go on these meandering paths through math during these sessions.
And okay, so let's say you work on permutations and September 15th. Like, would you periodically check in on that? Let's say they're targeting the December date. I mean, like on November 15th, how do you know there's still no permutations? Like what was your approach to
For
that?
sure. So we're going through it, but they're doing practice tests in the meantime. So
Yeah.
I will work in tests that I know have a bunch of permutation questions on them and see how they handle them 4 weeks after we've done that. And that's all manual, just keeping track in my notes of what we've done, what tests they have coming up. So I kind of know what is going to be in their future. And then hopefully we don't have to talk about it again. But if they, what I'll do is when we're reviewing the homework in that first 45 minutes, we'll review the questions they missed, but spend a lot of time actually going over questions that they got right, that are the things that we've done before. So, oh, you got this question right. Tell me how you did it. Did you remember the rules we talked about? What was your process here, to see if they're actually retaining things or if they guessed A and it happened to be A and they didn't really know how to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounded like you had a lot of materials you were comfortable with already. Like, what made you interested in Mathchops? Like, how did you think it could help you or your students?
Because as much as I do that, I feel like I am probably missing things that they maybe know how to do, but not quickly, or they're not doing them in a repeatable way.
Mhm.
So anytime there's like a tool that assesses those things with algorithms that are much smarter than I am and can spit out like, hey, you're actually struggling with this kind of question. And, maybe you're always plugging in the answers when you need to learn how to do it algebraically.
Right.
Those are things that I might not catch. And when there's a tool that helps me catch those things so that, they get better at them, but also so that we're talking about them, I always want to try and implement those things into my teaching.
Yep. That makes sense. So how do you use it? Like what would be a typical Mathchops assignment for a student?
It's very different, so for the higher scoring students, it's like, go do Mathchops for like, as much of it as you can every single week. And I'll look through it and keep tabs on what the questions are. And we actually won't spend a lot of time talking about the math stuff. Like if they're high scoring students, they're usually going to bring the questions that they struggled with to me. And they're also better at figuring out like, okay, I'm struggling with this type of question. Let me go figure out how to do it. Right. And they'll present to me like, okay, this is what I was doing. This is how I'm doing those now. And like, I finally broke through this question that stumped me 6 different times and kept me from like leveling up.
Yep.
And then with the more mid-range and lower level scoring students to start, we do a lot more of it together. Mm-hmm. So we'll work through question types, mostly the level challenge, and I'll watch them and listen to them reason things out and see where they're, getting trouble. Also sometimes like help them with a little prompt here and there where like they know they're doing everything right, but then they're about to divide 3 by 7 and they enter 2 decimals. And I'm like, I know Mathchops is going to make them do 3 and they're going to get it wrong, but they really don't deserve to.
Right.
So, to try and help with some of the frustration. And then I'll often just assign, like, I want you to level up to, you're at a 19 right now, try and get to level 23. And let's see if you can do that on your own, if that gets reflected in your practice test scores.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like to assign goals too. I think that I've gotten a lot more usage out of my students when I'm just like, get to this level rather than do 30 questions or something like that.
Yeah, like brings out their like competitive nature with themselves a little bit. And you can see them like grinding on it and getting mad when, like if they miss the first question and then start over, like to me, that's a great sign that they really care about leveling up and not just like going through the process because I told them to.
Yeah. They're responding to it like an actual game. They'll be like, oh, I was so close, or like, I was robbed, or whatever it was. And like
some kids are just like, I love the like coin sound when I get one right. That like, I'm like, okay, I guess that really does have an effect on people.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I think the main thing, kind of something you said a minute ago, is just when they see the connection between getting the score up in Mathchops and their actual test score going up. That's when it's a lot more exciting for them. If it's just, an extra game, I mean, there's lots of other games they can play that are more fun. So
like that, like Mathchops forces them to do the math like the right way. Yeah. Like it forces them to, you can't just test the answer choices or find the easy way to do things, which is good because like, then they know how to do it. But also then when we look at a test and say, actually, there are faster ways to do this one that you can use to supplement the process that works, you now have a decision like tree of looking at a question saying like, how many ways do I know how to do this question? Which of them is going to get me the answer the fastest? And that's kind of like the level of thinking I want them to have when they're taking the test, because you're always managing those 2 things at the same time.
Yeah. And I know you're a big golfer. I don't want to embarrass myself with a golf analogy here, but I mean, it does seem like, if you can only hit your 5-iron, that's a little bit limited, right? I mean, if you use like all these other clubs and you check the distance and the lie and all that kind of stuff, I mean, you can make a better decision. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, but I mean, how much do you think about golf with your math instruction? I mean, are there other parallels you see there? Or
it's funny, like the way golf creeps into my instruction is more like the mental side of the test and like the mental aspect of golf, because it's such a in your own head game, and the anxiety of it is what makes people make mistakes.
Yep.
So when you learn how to manage yourself better, you become a better golfer. So
Yes.
like my favorite kind of golf parallel I draw is that you have to be your own caddy. So a lot of times, you know, someone is taking a math section or doing a question and says like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, I can't believe I did that. How can I be so stupid? I'll never get this. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And like your caddy never tells you, God, that was a terrible shot. Like, how could you do that?
Yeah.
They always are going to say like, hey, you know, don't worry about it. We're going to go up there and we're going to play the next shot. And like, yeah, you pulled it a little bit, but you got to pick your head up and let's keep going. Right. So that idea of like getting it one question wrong doesn't mean you're dumb or bad at math or don't know how to do this. It's one question, and that's part of the process. So when you stop talking to yourself like you're an idiot, you stop thinking you're an idiot and think like, actually, I know how to do this. And when you can reflect that back to yourself, like, you know, the tutor's job is often to say, like, bring them down off of that, like, I suck at math mentality, because they don't most of the time.
Yep.
And when you break through that barrier that they have that's artificial, it helps them achieve whatever goals that they want and realize that like they can learn how to do this.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. So you get your students to use Mathchops quite a bit. Was it always that way, or did it take a little time like to integrate it? Did you kind of have any trouble integrating it into what you were doing?
Like with anything that I do, I want to do it more, and then I revert to the ways I've done it, and then like the more that I see it reflecting like actual scores, the easier it is to refer people to Mathchops and include it more in what I'm teaching. So now it's like I give it to everybody, but at the beginning I was like, okay, this seems to be good, but like I don't know that, you know, these aren't ACT questions. There's no multiple choice answers. Sometimes the answers are negative, like on the SAT stuff, and it's a different thing. And when it's different, my instinct is like, this isn't representative of true test questions, which is what they should be seeing the most.
Right.
But when you give them the skills and the tools that they need, and their scores are going up at the same rate that their Mathchops level is going up, then it's a lot easier to say like, here's something that you can do. And especially when you have 10 minutes, like do one level challenge. It doesn't take that long. It's better than doing nothing. And like, you're getting stuck on saying like, I don't have an hour to sit and do a math section. Okay, fine. Don't do one level challenge. And then, you know, when they do that, they usually do 3 or 4 or 5 because they don't level up and they want to. So they end up spending 25, 30 minutes on it. And it's something's always better than nothing when you're trying to get a kid to work on ACT prep, SAT prep.
Absolutely. And do you mostly assign the level challenge, or do they do category challenges?
I almost exclusively assign the level challenge until they get to a level where they're really getting stuck. And then we kind of go into the category challenges and say like, this is the kind of question you're getting stuck on. Let's talk about those questions and, you know, do some actual SAT and ACT questions on those topics. And then you go back and get that category challenge up as much as you can.
Yep, that makes sense.
But a lot of the kids that I assign just level challenges find the other stuff and do it on their own, even without me assigning it to them.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think that the most common pattern is similar to what you said. They'll use the level challenge, they get stuck, they'll go to the category challenges, earn a bunch of those badges, then go back and they kind of just toggle for as long as they can.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Do you have any advice for new users?
I think like one of the things that I did early on was just give it to students that have taken the test and have real scores and see how quickly they get up to their actual level. And like when you compare that plateau versus their actual score plateaus right now, you can see that like the tool is designed well and it helps work it in if you're not sure about it. And then one thing that I do that probably breaks the math a little bit is that I have students that really struggle with the time, and I give them more time than Mathchops allowed, because there are question types where like, I think it takes, they're slower readers. And if they're spending 25 seconds reading it and 15 seconds thinking about it, I'm okay if they don't answer it in 1 minute, but it takes them 1.5 or 2 minutes, because
Right.
they're at least improving their skills. And it might not be as reflective of their score, but their math is getting better. And to me, that's like the most important goal of this.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you're the tutor and you get to use the tool for your students in the way you think is best, So, I mean, if you think the extra time is going to help, then yeah, you should do it. I think,
I like the predictive power of the level is
yeah,
less accurate that way,
yeah,
but
that,
they're taking practice tests anyway. So we kind of
right.
know where that is.
Yeah. So sometimes that's worth sacrificing, in order to get that benefit. Absolutely.
Right.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you very much. It was fun talking to you, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yep.